Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and today we're going to be previewing the Crystal Palace game coming up this weekend. We're flying still off the back of Monday night against Brentford, the 2-1 victory. Here to talk it all through, we have Dad. How are we going, Pod Daddy?
Very well, thank you. Yep, keen to keep bubbling on about last Saturday, even though we're supposed to move on. I'm not sure I'm ready to move on yet. But yeah, good to be here.
And also joining us today, it's been a while. Sammy, welcome back to the pod. How are we going?
What's happening, friends? I've missed you all. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I've had a kidney stone. I've had many things happen to me. I've been on my trials and tribulations, and I'm here and I'm back. And what a way to come back! Like Harry Wilson. Just I don't really have words. Thankfully, you guys covered it all in like the last pod or the majority of it, so I can just sit back and pontificate as I always do. Have you missed me? Have you missed the bollocks? I'm excited. It's good to be home.
Well, I was about to say, why don't you tell us a bit about why you've been away? But I realise we've probably got about an hour that we want to try and fill, and we don't need an hour's worth of sound stories from the last. I'm sure it will come up. I have no doubt about that. But look, before we crack into it, as always, just a plug for the Discord, the That's So Craven Discord. You can find the links everywhere you find That's So Craven. Please do jump in. Really great community. Lots of chat going on in there at the moment. Absolute scenes when that Harry Wilson goal, both of those Harry Wilson goals went in. And yeah, the chat's been popping off the last few weeks. So please do join in. We really appreciate all the support in there. Let's just recap the game one more time. I just want to talk about this. Maybe we should recap this game before every podcast episode that we do, just to G ourselves up. But what a game it was, a 2-1 win against Brentford, a couple of last-minute goals. Sammy, you didn't join us for the preview or the review of the game. Why don't you just fill us in on how you're feeling after this one?
I mean, look, it wasn't a barn buster for the full, like, I'm going to say 88 minutes, but I mean, it's one of probably the few examples where you could probably boil down just that last 10. No, okay. You know what? I'm out of practice. I haven't done this in a minute. Okay. So you'll have to forgive me. Right. So key points that I want to start with: Reece Nelson. I don't care that like he wasn't necessarily as effective. I really like him starting. I really want that to potentially be a thing going forward because I quite like the chaos. Although I can understand why he hasn't started and he's kind of better off the bench. I think I kind of ultimately came to that decision, even though I did like it. I selfishly liked it. It's really great to see like Sander Berge actually kind of getting more cemented in the squad. But like, if we're going to talk about anyone, and everyone's done it, but it's still worth saying, just the most unlikely of little heroes, the man that we really wrote off. I'll be the first to say I completely wrote him off at the start of the season. I didn't think we had a place for him. I thought we were going to give the number 8 to somebody else by probably like January. And look, I mean, if no one's watching you and no one's seeing you and no one's going to like see you as a threat, you just have all the more opportunity to just take every opportunity that you can. And I'm just stoked for him. Bless him. Like Wilson, in all like the post-match interviews I saw, he just couldn't contain himself. He looked like he was buzzing. He looked like he just done like 3 racks of something. He was just jittery and just had nothing to like really articulate, but he was just so elated. And I'm just really happy for him. I love these boys. So I'm just happy when they're happy. And he's needed something like that all season. So it's just great. And just hectic. It was just hectic last 10 minutes of football. But that's why it's beautiful. It's good.
I seem to remember. I seem to remember a long time ago. It could have even been in the first season back to the Premier League. Sam's recommendation to Harry Wilson was to go on a Kontiki tour and get a top knot
and a tattoo.
Maybe. Well, he's already got a couple, but I think he did add a few. But maybe he's done that secretly. Maybe he's done it.
Yeah, he's just found himself. He did an ayahuasca, and he's just a new man, and I love it.
I saw a really good comment on Twitter over the last couple of days, and it really rang true. You watch. I don't know if you guys saw the interviews as the players were all coming in to Motspur Park the next day, or even the full access as well post game, seeing everyone in the change rooms. It really does seem like this is a group of not just a group of blokes who play for Fulham as their job. It really feels like a lot of these guys are actually Fulham fans. And obviously that I don't think that's absolutely true, but the way they care about the club and the way they actually are all playing and the way they act together as a group, they're really all in. And I think a lot of that is down to Marco and the work that he's done off the pitch at bringing this group together. I just thought that was so great, seeing how excited everyone was and how we were talking about it when we previewed the game and wondered if these derbies actually affect the players and the players realize how important they are to the fans and put in that bit of extra effort. And having seen that, I really do feel like, yes, they really do. This means a lot to them. Even though it's a win against another mid-table team, it's almost more important than wins against, Liverpool or Arsenal. It feels like it means more to the squad, and I just love that, and I love how much everyone said, everyone's getting around Wilson and just saying he's working so hard, and they understand that Marco has to leave players out because the squad is so strong at the moment, and it just feels like there's a really good vibe around the squad, and I think we've mentioned it a few times so far this season.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful, it really feels like everyone's playing for each other. I've definitely mentioned that before in previous pods, but it really feels like very genuine at the moment. Like when everyone was just going ballistic after Wilson's second goal, the thing that really kind of struck me is the way that Anderson was giving him a cuddle. And everyone was just smacking him, and everyone was just kind of smacking each other. And it didn't feel like it was Wilson's moment. It felt like everyone's moment starring Wilson, if that makes sense. It felt like that was a team goal because it felt like everyone was doing everything that they were asked to from Silva. We were pushing, we were pressing. And bless him, you could probably argue that Wilson was just the lucky one, but isn't it lovely when your teammate's lovely and your teammate is lucky and everyone's happy for him? I think that's just the sign of a really, really strong unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Dad, any final words on the Brentford game?
Oh, look, probably nothing unique, but I can still tell you how I feel about it. Only that I had a really frustrated feeling for most of the game. I just thought, oh, not again, cannot possibly be happening again. And unfortunately, I did see the word Wilson in one of your tweets or one of your messages, Jack. And so I knew he did something, and I knew he was on the bench. So I thought, okay, he's going to come on, he's going to score. But I had no idea he was going to score too. And I actually brought a tear to my eye. It was so kind of emotional, not just because we won, but it was Brentford, it was Wilson, it was dramatic, it was kind of payback for all those shitty moments we've had late in the game, and it was a nice little moment to be a Fulham fan, not least because Craven Cottage was going nuts, and to your point previously, and I was the one who questioned just how much these players get up for local derbies and fan rivalries, but clearly they're getting enormous feedback from the crowd, so that's gonna inject enormous amounts of energy into them, and I think they thoroughly enjoyed doing that for the fans. So yeah, fantastic.
Here's a question to pose to you, and it's based on something Sam just raised. We talked about, well, it's been mentioned the number of games we've sort of coughed up points late on. Does this make up for those games so far this season? Would you lose those 4 points to have this moment?
Probably not.
To be fair, you know what? I'm gonna say yeah. Like if it like pushes us forward, like 4 points in the grand scheme of things. If we were talking 6 or 8 points, I'm not really sure if I can get behind that. But like 4 points, I think I can accept that for this win. If that's the trade I need to make with the devil, I can accept that.
Well, I think the thing is, we might know in a month or so, because it's possible that this has actually lit some touch paper and has fired us off and really, pumped both the squad and the fans, quite frankly, to really kind of re-energize and get enthusiastic, because it was all getting a little bit despairing, really, in terms of the way some of these games were turning out. Not our overall position, but just what could be. And it just felt like we just couldn't nail it. There was so many good signs about the way we were playing, and we just couldn't nail it, and it was frustrating.
Like sunshine every day only makes a desert. So you need some rain, so then you can appreciate that nice glow.
Sam,
We've missed the
I feel
prodigal
like
son.
we've sort of missed you, but yeah, sort of. You guys, very exciting moment as well. And I'd just like to introduce our special guest for today, who's come on very last minute for us, but really appreciate it. Jack Kelly here to join us. How are we going, Jack?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, actually.
No, really appreciate the last minute call up. We're scrambling to try a few different things today and opening up the live stream to anyone who'll take us. Unfortunately, Jack has answered the call. Jack, we've just been talking about the Brentford game. How are you feeling post game? Must be absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, my head is still spinning, really, from what was a chaotic night. It was absolutely fantastic, wasn't it? I mean, from the emotion of, I can't believe we're going to lose this derby when we've been absolutely all over them, to great, we've now won the derby, we've got one over them. Fabio Cavalier missed a big chance. We're now above them in the table. Thomas Frank's fuming. The whole crowd are buzzing. Marco Silva's genuinely like going nuts. I mean, it was fantastic, wasn't it? Big night, and actually that could be a huge catalyst for us going forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With the games we've got coming up against Palace and Wolves, especially, hopefully 6 points in the bag against those two sides who are, you could say, potentially struggling this season. Well, definitely struggling this season. So, as you said just before, Dad, it does feel like a touch paper moment where things could really take off from this point onwards. And the game against Spurs, we've seen what we've done to Spurs in the past as well. That's a winnable game. So there's a real push for potential European spots in the next few weeks, definitely. Jack, obviously aware of you that you haven't got too long with us, so let's jump into the Palace game. Why don't you give us your general thoughts on this one and how you feel this one's going to pan out?
I genuinely feel quite confident, and obviously, feeling this confident before a game against Crystal Palace almost is unheard of, given Selhurst Park is a very, very hard place to go. But they're dropping like flies. I mean, Hughes got a fifth yellow card. He's out. Nketiah yesterday picked up a hamstring injury. He could be out. We'll hear from Glasner tomorrow. So actually, we'll be keeping an eye on those quotes for, I think, about 1:30. And Eze, Wharton, all these very, very key players for them. They've got a solid back five, and they'll play. It'll be Mitchell, Munoz, Lequaux, Chalobah, and Gay and Henderson in goal. That's fine. But going forward, they are a little bit lost. I mean, Jek Doucouré, very, very good midfielder. Kamada can play in centre mid, can play further up. Ismail Assar, we've seen at Watford. He plays slightly higher up as well, in that sort of 2-10 positions behind Mateta. So it'll be probably Jeffrey Schlupp playing slightly higher up as well. Now, Schlupp is a player who has got so much criticism from Crystal Palace fans so far this season, especially the cameo against Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup. Despite winning the game, he genuinely performed at such a poor level. I'm very, very excited. I think Harry Wilson needs to come in. I think Pereira obviously might start, because that's how Silva loves to set up. But Wilson should play a part in this game, given what happened on Monday night.
Yeah, well, it's something we were definitely talking about beforehand. Go ahead, Dad.
No, I was just going to say, it was a question. If you name him man of the match, how can you leave him out? Even though he's arguably, he scored 2 goals. That's a huge contribution. But is Marco Silva actually ready to bring him on and start him just for that? Interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I'd like to think yes, but given how Marco, like I said, sets up, it's always going to be Pereira in the 10. That's just because of his work off the ball. And it like Pereira got taken off at 65 minutes for Adama Traore, I think, on Monday. And that's obviously quite an early time to make a change to bring off Pereira, but he genuinely wasn't really making much of an impact on the game. Wilson can play on the right. He can sometimes play on the left. He can play down the middle. And what we saw from Monday night was 2 goals that came from him playing in the number 10 position in that sort of pocket inside the box or just outside the box. But I would love to see him start. I think all the Fulham fans would love to see him start, especially over a player like Pereira, who, let's face it, is getting stick week on week really from Fulham fans.
Oh,
but he's
I'm
surely.
not sure. I'm not
Go.
sure.
Go, Sam.
I just like look. I love the narrative. I really, really love the narrative. And if I'm playing career mode on FIFA right now, I'm probably going ahead with Wilson. But the conservative in me just can't do it yet. I just need to see more. If he comes off the bench and is like 2005, 2006 Ronaldinho, then I think it's a bit more of a definitive, yeah, let's roll with this. But I've just been hurt so many times recently with Crystal Palace, and every time I feel, actually, no, aside from when we pumped them, but it's such a intensely contested game that for those kind of situations, I lean on conservative. But I love the narrative. I want to believe, but I'm just jaded. I'm jaded and I'm old.
I like the idea of Wilson still making an impact from the bench. I think that's important. I think that if he has been recently relied upon to come off the bench and make a difference, then he might be the first player Marco calls on if we want to make a change. And I think that Pereira obviously could make way. It could be Iwobi, it could be anyone. It could be Smith Rowe. But now there's that sort of memory that's now steeped in Fulham history that Wilson came off the bench and scored these 2 goals. Fans will be not praying. What's the word when they sort of they'll be clamoring for Wilson. And I'm hearing rumours of a new constructed chant of the Harry Wilson, Mitrovic, and Neeskins. It's going to be changed to something like Harry Wilson, Jimenez, and Nelson, which I think is nice.
That works.
Interesting.
Jack, a question that I posed to you on Twitter when you asked for questions for Marco for his presser. How do you fit? Well, if you look at the squad at the moment and you look at Harry Wilson now hitting some form, Adama being one of our better players so far this season, Reece Nelson has looked very good every time he's come off the bench and played pretty well against Brentford as well. Smith Rowe and Iwobi have both been, I'd say, consistent without sort of peaking so far this year. But how do you fit all of these guys into a starting 11 and what kind of changes do you think we should be making going into this game?
It's difficult because, like Marco said after the game, we all saw that clip that, it's sort of my fault. It's not your fault that you're not playing. It's mine because I have a system where you can only fit so many players in on the team sheet. But I wouldn't change the system whatsoever. I think that's working very, very well. I actually don't think we're going to make a change at all going into Saturday, just because of the way Silva likes to set up. And it is frustrating that, obviously the FA Cup's not going to come around until January. So these players like Wilson, like even Harrison Reed, Tom Cairney, Adama Traore, who right now, I imagine Traore will get a start before the FA Cup comes around. But these players who are looking like they're going to be on the fringes, who are not getting opportunities from the start, are not going to get an opportunity to start until early January. It is obviously quite frustrating, but I think there's a good squad harmony. Players are very happy for others to take their place, and they're ready to come on when they're called upon. And if we're seeing impact like we did from Wilson on Monday, even TC off the bench was fantastic. Rodrigo Muniz made that space so that Wilson could run into the box and track the defenders away because of Muniz's run. These are players who all know the system very well. They all know what to do. And they've showed quality off the bench as well, even like Reece Nelson we've seen. And obviously that means he has now started. So you can come off the bench, make an impact, and then wriggle your way into the starting 11 like we see with Nelson. I wonder whether Harry Wilson will be the same.
Talking about working your way into the starting 11, someone who's impressed, I'd say, in recent weeks, Sander Berger, who has definitely grown into that position. He looked a little bit off the pace, I'd say, in his first couple of appearances, but with Lukic out, Berger's done well and kind of nailed down that position. How do you see that working when Lukic returns from injury after the international break? Do you think Marco, he does tend to stick with players for a little while as people come back from injury. Do you think that's likely to happen, or do you think Lukic will slot straight back into that position?
If you'd asked me that after the Villa game, I would have said Lukic comes straight back in, but Berger's actually impressed completely, not even against Everton, but against Brentford as well. If he keeps putting in these type of performances and growing in confidence, obviously he goes away to Norway next week, and obviously we don't want him to pick up an injury there, but if he was to impress with Norway as well, I don't see Lukic coming in and displacing him straight away. There is a scenario where obviously Lukic could play as the number 6, and we could see Berger a little bit further forward as the 8, but then suddenly you've got to miss out, you've got to leave out one of Pereira, you've got to leave out one of Emil Smith-Rowe, and that probably doesn't work for Marco because there's not enough creativeness on the pitch, albeit it would be very, very solid in midfield, and probably less likely to get overran in midfield on transition by the opposition. But I generally think that spark, that creativeness we get from Pereira, from Smith-Rowe, driving runs forward, linking up the wingers, is very, very important to the way we build up in our system. So it's a great question. It's one that we'll probably see over the next couple of weeks, or after the international break, because Lukic is now back in training. The sling is off, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. It's just another great headache we have, and that is a theme amongst the whole squad. There's genuinely just Marco Silva must lay awake at night going, God, like I have such a good team, I have such a good squad. How am I going to keep everyone happy? And it just so happens that luckily, because he's such a great man manager, it seems like even Stephen Bender is keeping himself happy. Everyone's happy at the moment.
I think, interestingly, the guys who are missing out are good team men. They're not prima donnas. They're not divas. So, and I think it's probably generally true of all of the guys that Marco's recruited. That seems to be a pretty key thing for him. Maybe because he's so mindful of the fact that these situations do arise. And when they do, you've got to have good men who are in for the team. So I suspect that whilst they obviously want to be performing and playing Premier League football and don't want to be missing out, I think everyone's on board. It looks like it. They're either they're either faking it for us or they genuinely are on board. But if those videos are to be believed, it certainly looks like it. I think you're spot on when you said a couple of weeks ago, if it was a question, does Lukic come back in? Lukic would have come back in with a sling 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But I don't think. I think he, from a significant injury and a number of weeks out of playing football, there's no way he's just going to come on and start. Just won't happen. And I think that will inject even more life into Berger. And he's looking more and more confident. He looked desperate. He did some really, really good things in the final moments. I mean, he kept that he was a big part of keeping Carvalho, or stopping Carvalho breaking our hearts on Saturday. And there's a desperation about him that I think will be loved in the squad. So I cannot see him losing that position.
I think Silva's really good as well, like balancing the squad. And I don't know what he's saying to them behind closed doors, as much as I like to pontificate on what it might potentially be. But he seems to be really good at just going, it might not be now, but you're going to have your moment at some point. It's definitely going to come. Because he seems to have done a nice rotation of everyone, because like Lukic, when we first got him, he didn't necessarily have that time, but then he basically kept them on side. And then the second we lost Polina, he's like, it's you now. And while Lukic has been out, it's been Berg's time, and he's gone, it's you now. And then everyone is just a part of the mix, and he seems to be sharing it around really, really well. I don't like the fact that Lukic doesn't come straight back in though, because I really like what Lukic is. He kind of feels like somebody who would just slash your tires, and I like that in the squad. I like that in just because I like how Berg is quite graceful and he's strong, but I like the chaos that Lukic kind of has. It's not Polina level chaos. That's like an atomic bomb. That's Incredible Hulk. But I still appreciate Lukic being there. It's unique, and I like when there's unique things in the squad. It gives us an unpredictability, kind of like a Jimenez kind of quality. It's like you can't really quantify it, but it's very worth it.
Jack, I'm wary that you don't have too much longer with us, so I guess a question for you as you're about to go and talk with Marco. What's the one question that you are kind of looking forward to asking Marco, or the most important question you've got for him today?
Yeah, this is the moment, the morning of, I sort of deliberate what's a key topic, and I factor in the fact that I'm not the first to ask him a question, so I've got to have backup questions. So usually I go very, very niche and I ask about one individual player. So today I sort of want to ask him about Anthony Robinson, because I feel like I'm ticking off all these players that I've been asking about. Maybe I should ask more about the collective, the squad, mood, but I feel like that's going to be asked for sure. I wanted to ask about Robinson's contributions, the athleticism, that even at the end of the game against Brentford, when they had that chance, it looked like he was slightly lagging behind and actually, almost tired out. Where I can't remember who got the ball, but he got the better of Robinson down the right hand side, pulled it across to Carvalho, but then still had the energy to go forward and put the assist in right at the end of the game, where I thought he was flat out on his feet. So I wanted to ask about that sort of persistence and that sort of the energy that he brings to the team right to the last minute. And of course, he's a player who is, I think, the best Premier League left back. I genuinely think he's the best left back in the Premier League.
Yeah, and interesting how there's been those links pop up with seeing that Liverpool have put him on their shortlist to replace Robertson at some point. So obviously his age, I would have thought, comes into play there, because I would have thought Liverpool would be looking at a slightly younger potential left back to slip in there. But I mean, he's been great, and we mentioned it in the last episode as well, how he's now got 10 assists for Fulham, and I think there's only a fairly small handful of players who've got 10 assists in the Premier League for Fulham over the last 20 odd years. So he's definitely, his final ball has improved out of sight in the last couple of years. It was something we were really missing, I think, in that first season up from the Championship, where we just wanted that additional final ball, and to see the balls that he's putting into the box on a regular basis, and to see the way he works with Iwobi, the way he worked with Willian last season, saw it with Nelson a bit as well, and I assume that'll develop as he continues to play with him. He's become outstanding, and he's become a genuine world-class left back. And I think, we have to sort of praise Marco for that, because he would have worked with him a lot over the last couple of years and improved a couple of little aspects of his game that have got him to that level. So, no, a great question for sure. Guys, is there anything else just before Jack has to pop off that we want to ask?
Ooh. Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. You're going to have to. Everyone's going to be. You can probably predict what most of the questions are going to be, whether they're not about Harry Wilson or squad team and mood. Yeah, maybe it's a question of peri peri or sardines. What's your favourite, Marco?
Literally, that I would never ask something like that, but because that would be a question. That'd be a question if I did a sit down with him, which I'm hoping to do at some point this season. I want to get to know the man behind the manager. I want everyone to see that, and that's I've sort of let the cat out of the bag there. But essentially, that is one of my aims for this season, and that would have to be, unfortunately, because of the way I have to work, it would have to be behind a paywall. But I would try and get people to sign up based on that sort of interview. They would love to hear from Marco in that sense. I've got questions to him like, how do you switch off? And, what do you do when you celebrate a win? What do you do when you lose? Like, people want to know these answers. And I'm in talks with the club, shall I say, about that potentially being a possibility. So that's exciting.
No, I think that'd be great, because he is. It does always feel cards very close to the chest with Marco. So
absolutely,
to see behind the man behind the mask, I think would be great. And look, Jack, thank you very much for joining us today, mate. And just to plug for your Patreon and your Twitter, if you want to do that for us.
Yeah, no, honestly, off the back of the win against Brentford, I've gained a few more subs. I genuinely think it is quite a unique service that I'm offering, especially for fans who aren't in England as well. Every day I'm uploading video content, audio content. You'll have the full presser. You'll be able to watch it in full. You'll get the audio from the embargoed sections. which is when Marco sits back a little bit and is a little bit more relaxed. You can hear him speak more about certain topics, whatever. And then I'm changing up a little bit for the match day content going forward. Not only you see a full-time report, a half-time report, press conference, my thoughts before the game, my food review when I eat at the ground, but I'm now going to react to individual goals as well as they go in, so that you can get that sort of raw emotion. Because I'm a journalist, but I'm a fan as well, and I think people want to see that balance. It's $5.50 a month. It's £5 a month. I think it's a reasonable price. There's no athletic coverage of us anymore. The fabulous Peter Rutz has moved on, so right now it's the only place to get daily Fulham content, and I'm nearing 100, and I would love to get there before the new year. And I think people signing up would be a huge help for me. It really is quite an extraordinary place to be, and the community is absolutely amazing. So I would love more people to sign up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're doing really great work this year, Jack. And I think all of us appreciate it as well, especially, like you said, those overseas fans who can't be at every single game. To be able to feel a little bit closer to the game every week is really important for all of us, I think. So look, really appreciate your work. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast as well, mate.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, say g'day to Marco for us.
I will. G'day, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers, Jack.
Thank you.
Peace.
Well, how good was that?
I just love the idea that I'm going to see an interview soon and there's going to be sardines and peri-peri on the table, and I will know. You got the exclusive here.
Chicken peri-peri.
Chicken peri-peri. You weren't specific, but again, I'm just gonna.
Marco would know. Marco would know. Yeah.
No, that was it's actually just great having Jack. I mean, like I said, he's been doing a really great job with his content on Patreon and just on Twitter. He is all over it. And as he said, with Peter Rutzler no longer at the Athletic, and with the Athletic no longer covering Fulham in the way they were doing previously, it is tough to find that sort of daily content. And I guess you do need an in, if you will, at the club, and having someone who's doing that on a regular basis is basically their full-time job is really important. So I do definitely appreciate the work Jack's done, and obviously we know him from his work with Fulhamish as well. And look, it's just great to have him on the show, and hopefully we'll be able to get him on in the future as well. But look, let's keep talking about Palace, because we haven't really had a chance. Jack did mention it. And Sammy, I'll throw to you. There's some really big names out of this game. We look at Eze, we look at Wharton, we look at Jefferson Lerma, unavailable. And as we mentioned as well, Nketiah with a hamstring injury that he picked up on the weekend. A lot of outs for Palace. Do we feel that's got to be surely advantage Fulham at this point?
Look, honestly, I think our actual advantage is momentum. I mean, prior to this game, if we had been we'd finished up 1-1, or God forbid, maybe 1-0, I think we'd be having a very, very different conversation now, because I think Brentford are over the past couple of years, they've been very, very up and down, whereas it feels that we've been very consistently locked in a dance with Crystal Palace. We're the redemption club. They're the young up-and-comers who have got something to prove. But we are both very well managed, very chugging along, kind of consistently building something good on both sides, just doing it in different ways. And the last couple of games that we've had have been really, really tight. We've got Anderson now, which is a huge thing for us. I don't think we've actually talked about that too much. We actually have somebody who knows their system, was such a key player for them, and who's now going to be actively on our side. I think that gives us a huge advantage, but it's just one of those games where I don't want to say anything can happen. If anything, it's more like I feel like we just kind of just get a bit deadlocked whenever we play them. So I want to believe, I want to because, and again, it's good for the hype and it's good for everything. And I think we'll have so much hype after this win. The first 20 minutes, I think we're going to come out like all guns blazing. But for the full 90 minutes, it's really hard for me to say. I think, but it'll be competitive, and I think it'll be a decent game.
Look, Palace are having a dreadful season. Let's be honest. They looked in disarray pretty much from the start of the season. Their results have been poor. They're languishing from memory just outside of the relegation zone at the moment. And the only player that I'd really be bothered by is Eze. And I watched the highlights of their Wolves game. He didn't look that good, to be honest. He looked off it. And now he's got an injury, so he won't even be there. So there's a lot of outs for Palace, a lot of outs for an already poor Palace. I genuinely was thinking over the last few weeks, I wasn't depressed about our performances. Obviously, our results are disappointing. We just couldn't put it together. You know, we looked good. We looked dangerous. Build-up play was great. We looked really silky smooth in so many passages of play, but we couldn't score goals and we couldn't hang on when we did have the lead. But I think I'm far from alone in really believing that something was going to click. It's a bit like talking about Robinson. You know, if you put that many crosses in as he's been doing, something's going to happen. And I think that's indicative of our form over the last few weeks. We haven't got the results, but we've been playing well. And if you keep persisting and you keep believing, something's going to happen. And even if we didn't win in the fashion that we did on Saturday against Brentford, I still would have believed that our form was better than Crystal Palace, even if we didn't win on Saturday. Now that we've won, I think we're up and about. And I think this is the beginning of a little run that I was hoping for, because the fixtures in front of us are generally pretty kind. And I think they give us the opportunity to capitalise on where we got to on Saturday evening. So, yeah, fingers crossed. It's the Premier League. Things can happen. Individuals can break your heart in the Premier League, and against the run of play, you can be in trouble. But I think it's unlikely. If we can keep doing what we've been doing, I think we shouldn't have any problems.
It's an interesting prospect, this game. If you look at the table, which we've got up on our live stream at the moment, Palace played 10 games, 1 win, 4 draws, 5 losses, only a -5 goal difference, which for 5 losses this season means, and I think their only win so far this season was by 1 goal. So it's not like they're getting flogged in games. And they've got a pretty solid defence. I just think we're going to see even less from them going forward. And I wonder, seeing as they already play 5 at the back, if we're going to see them park the bus a little more against us. The only thing that might convince them not to do that is the fact that they're so far down the table at the moment and in real danger of being pulled into a relegation scrap. I don't think they can just go and park the bus against teams. It's very negative football, but I guess when you don't have any other attacking options, what options do you have? So I'm wary that we did struggle a lot against Brentford's extremely low block. I wonder if this weekend against Palace we might run into the same problems. And if so, Sammy, I'll pose to you, who would you select for this game, assuming that Palace will sit back deep and try and hold on and try and get just something out of this game, maybe on the counter?
Oh, God. It's got to be Traore, isn't it? You got to prioritize Traore if you can, just because he's our Sonic the Hedgehog. He's our who else in the squad can realistically do what Traore does? And like if you take, for example, like the Man United game, there's only maybe about 4 players in the world that can actually do that. So, and I think we benefit when we're playing unpredictably. It's the mark of a really, really good side. And I think for games like this, you kind of have to be unpredictable, because if a team's just going to park the bus, and if a team's just going to sit back or really fight it out with you, you can't necessarily play beautiful football all the time. You have to just think outside the box. So I'm thinking Traore. Who else do I want? It's got to, for me. It's probably got to be Traore, Iwobi, Jimenez. If I'm just thinking of like the attacking front three, because I'd love to say Reece Nelson, but I think it's pretty well established that Reece Nelson is better at a late stage of the game, and then he can come and bring on chaos. I'm sorry, I can't. Like, I can't. I love the idea. I really like the concept, and you know me, I love an underdog, but I just can't. I can't select Wilson in that starting lineup. Like, let him be the hero off the bench. I don't like. I can't see him being a hero at the start of the game. I just can't see it. He's not really that. I've never really seen him as that player. I've never really seen him to do like full from the start of the game. Be turbo from the get-go. He's never really been that guy because he's always kind of struggled with confidence. And I'd rather him just be like a chimp in the corner in a cage, just bustling to like get out and just shaking the cage. Then when Marco lets it loose, we're going. You know, that's what I would prefer.
The problem you've got is if they sit back, park the bus, low block, whatever you want to call it, it just doesn't provide the room for Adama to get in behind because there is no behind. The only way he can have an effect is if they counter, lose the ball, and then we get in behind using Adama. But it's kind of a very niche play in that system. I'd be keener on Reece Nelson to come in with his trickery and just run at them and just encourage him to try and hit the mark, challenge the keeper, pull the trigger, and maybe who else can make those runs right now and really slice defenses open other than Harry Wilson.
Well, my only critique to that though is like we got to play a full 90 minutes here. And I would almost rather them getting worn out by doing like 60, 70 minutes of Traore just trying to get through and them having to keep up with him, and then bring on Nelson, who's arguably got a better foot on him, as opposed to the other way around. And then Nelson be trying to be tricky and trying to be quick for the majority of the game, and then bringing on a Traore who will probably break that line. I think we can fairly assume that he will break that line. Then might not have the end result.
I don't know. I think the other way around. I think realistically they're going to sit so deep that Traore is not going to have opportunities to get in behind very often. And so the idea of him running them ragged for 70 minutes and then letting Nelson come on to exploit that is probably going to not quite work out the way we're expecting that to work out. I think realistically, you go Nelson and then hope that his trickery sort of almost mentally exhausts them. And then at the end of that, you have Adama come on. And Adama actually has been quite impressive. I sent a little clip to you guys, I think, of his footwork sort of late on in the game where he does a step over, quickly nicks the ball past a couple of players, breaks into the box, and he has a shot blocked, I think, at that point. And even to get the cross in, just being able to find that extra bit of space against a tired set of legs. I think I'd prefer to see... I really love what Adama's done so far this season, but I would prefer to see him come off the bench in this particular game. I think maybe when we look at Spurs in a couple of weeks' time, well, after the international break, so more than a couple of weeks' time, but that's a game where Spurs play an incredibly high line. They're not going to be sitting deep and trying to defend for their lives. That's a game where I see Adama possibly getting selected over Nelson. Or maybe we see Adama and Nelson both selected for that game, knowing that they have that sort of excess of pace, and Iwobi maybe comes on later in the game to add some more technical ability, if you will. I think this is a game for Nelson, and I think it's unlike Marco to bring someone in for one game and then drop them as well. And I think with all of Marco's selection questions that we ever ask ourselves and each other, it always comes down to what is Marco realistically going to do, realistically, he's going to stick with the same team, especially the team that got a win. Even with Harry Wilson's heroics, I can't see him squeezing into the side.
Yeah, 100.
Kish at Cottage Tactico just made a good comment, and well, basically in support of Nelson with his pace and technical ability over Adama. But the final part of his comment that he made, I think, is really relevant, where he says, and he seems to help ESR as well. That is Nelson, and I've long thought that he's another very skillful player, and he needs enablers around him. He needs people who will play those little triangles, little give and goes, and I think he likes that style of football, but it probably doesn't get enough support. And when he does get that support, it looks changed and very, very exciting. And I'd love to see that, because I think that, the Arsenal boys, if you want to call them that, even Iwobi loves getting involved in that. Iwobi, Nelson, Smith Rowe. Yeah, I think that's a pretty potent little combination of trickery.
Oh, there's definitely something to that. Those three guys who played at Arsenal together and know each other well, and also I think, as Kish mentioned in his comment, it's the technical ability and the understanding between those three, and it's almost a telepathic understanding. The ability to know, well, this is the kind of run that I would make, and so that's where I'm going to put the ball. Smith Rowe's got the ball at his feet. He goes, I would be running into that little space there. He plays the ball to that space, and Reece Nelson is in that space because he's on the same page.
Yeah,
and I think you can't quantify that, because it's so important having players who are on the same wavelength. And I think we sort of saw it last season with Robinson and Willian on the wing, and Kearney as well, when they were sort of all clicking together. The ball was just zipping around between the three of them, and it was impossible for the opposition to get even close. And I think we're going to get to a point where we start to get those guys on the same page. And I could see Reece Nelson, Smith Rowe, and Robinson down that left being impossible to get the ball off. And when you get Pereira actually getting involved as well, and potentially Berger or Lukic on top of that getting involved in like a set of 5 players around that sort of area, it's deadly. It's dangerous. And I think it'll take some time before we're settled and we're there, but we're definitely getting there.
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing, Dad?
No, it doesn't matter.
No, you got it now. Like, what's tickling you?
Well, I saw the link published on both on the live chat and also in the Discord. Yeah. And I think that people have got some stage fright. I can just tell. I can feel that there's a bunch of people that really love to get on. But they've got some stage fright. I could just feel them sitting in their keyboard, like with the fingers going, shall I, shan't I? And I just thought to myself, I was going to get my Rey Mysterio mask out and actually dial in on from my mobile phone and come in, and maybe
for the
ask.
Context for those not following along on the live.
So you just had that in your head. You just had that in your head, and you started laughing at the idea that you made in your head. Kish, get online. Like, we want to talk to you.
For context, we have opened up the live stream, because obviously with all of our episodes, we do stream these live on Twitter and on YouTube. We have opened it up and sent out a link for people to join us on the live stream, ask their questions, get involved with the chat. We're trying something a little bit different and being a little bit more open to other people joining in and interacting with the podcast. So look, there's probably 10 minutes of this episode left. If anyone is interested in being a little bit brave, feel free. As Kish said, he's half dead from the US elections overnight, so totally understandable, Kish. Let's not even delve into that.
Everyone else's excuse.
No. Let's have a quick look at Palace's recent form. So a 2-2 draw with Wolves. Does that sound right? A 2-2 draw with Wolves? Have I got that wrong?
No, it's correct.
No, it is. Sorry, I got the date wrong in our graphic, but no. A 2-2 draw with Wolves in the league, a 2-1 win against Villa in the League Cup, a 1-0 win against Spurs, which is their only win of the season, a bit of an upset there. 1-0 losses against Forest and Liverpool in the league as well. I mean, looking at that form, it doesn't look terrible at first glance. Forest and Liverpool, obviously, two sides who are performing very well this season. The draw with Wolves is a bit of a red flag, but a win over Tottenham, again, Tottenham are a little bit up and down this year, but still a good side. Can you read too much into that? And looking at the injuries that they now have to deal with, do you think this is going to be a very different Palace side that we're going to see?
Yeah, look, the Prem's weird.
Might be a kids' team.
True.
It's so. I mean, it's the beauty of football, isn't it? It's so hard to just actually predict. I mean, we can come on here and we can talk about it, and we can like debate on what the best course of action is going to be. But the best course of action is just going to be the one that wins on the day. And there's like it's so hard to actually tell, and it's still relatively early days. I mean, for Christ's sake, like Nottingham Forest is third in the table. That can't last. I refuse to accept that that's going to last. So I think there's going to be a lot of like reshuffling in like the next coming months. I mean, Aston Villa's really good side. Same with Tottenham. I have to take that into account when it's coming like to playing them.
That was a cup game, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but even still, even still, it's all.
It was a fairly rotated Villa side, especially with their participation in the Champions League. I don't think it was a full strength side. So it's. I mean, the Forest comment you make as well. I agree. Forest will come down at some point. If you've had a look at Forest's fixtures so far this season, they've probably had the easiest run of fixtures I think I've ever seen, and they had an upset win against Liverpool. And I think when you look at it like that and look at their upcoming fixtures, they got to play Newcastle, then Arsenal, easy game against Ipswich, but then Man City, Man United, and Aston Villa. Their next sort of run of 5 or 6 games, they might be in for a bit of a tougher test, and that's the point where Fulham can actually move slightly further up the table. Sort of final question on Palace, and I think you sort of touched on it, Sammy, but what kind of reception do you think Anderson will have when we return to Selhurst Park? Obviously, a lot of comments about how Anderson wasn't the better of the two centre-backs. They signed Lacroix, who has been okay so far this season, but with a Palace defence that obviously isn't getting enough shutouts to rocket them up the league so far. Do you think there'll be a bit of spite there almost for a player who they've lost and would potentially be making a difference to their team?
Look, I think I don't know that many Palace fans. I can't really speak for them. I don't know what like the plot line that they have in their head when it comes to their relationship with Anderson is. I imagine they're probably looking down on him because look, I think we got to be really honest with ourselves. He came to Fulham for a better pay package and to be part of a. I've always seen it as a move across more than like a move up or a move down. So that might be a little bit of a sour taste. I think he did good things for them, but I mean, if you compare it to the Scott Parker season that we had with him, like we really held on to that. We burned a candle in our window for that boy for way longer than we really should have. But with the idea that he would come home, and we were delusional, but it paid off. So he's got a richer place here, and I think he probably has more love here than he did at Crystal Palace. But again, I don't think they would boo him or dislike him or hate him. I think when they play against him, they probably will because he's filthy as anything. And I think that's probably going to like click in the head when they actually play against him because then they'll get a bit of perspective on what he actually is as a player. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be crass. But yeah, I think he's home, and I think whatever criticism he gets from Palace fans, he'll be greeted with love by us. So
I think you summed it up pretty well, Sam. I think as much as they must have appreciated his quality, we've always loved him in our brief little holiday romance that we had with him as a lone player. And I think he you know, he seemed to fit in very well. He was a standout for us, and I think we were really sad to see him go, but we kind of accepted it that, you know, it wasn't going to end. It was going to come to an end. I think the Palace fans must have been completely blindsided because it came out of nowhere. Really, I mean, who was really believing that we were going to sign Anderson? You know, so it was obviously a very opportunistic move from his perspective. But come on, it's a job, and someone's offered him a lot more money. So who could really blame the guy? I know football fans don't always see it that way, but who could blame the guy? I also think that there clearly seemed to be some problems in the dressing room towards the end of last year, and there seemed to be some rumblings, and it could well be it'll come out someday. It could well be that he didn't see eye to eye, and so was looking for an out anyway. And the fact that it came with a big increase in his wage packet, just a massive bonus, but he probably wanted out anyway. I think it'll be salty. I think they'll be very pissed off. If they'd been doing really, really well all season, perhaps they could look beyond it. But to lose a quality player, a really high quality player, and then have a shitty season, that's not going to go down well.
Maybe, but I also think that like you get real shitty and get really salty with the players that you actually kind of low key love. Like I really don't like Carvalho because I was getting to the point where I was about to love him, and that's why he pisses me off now. Same with like Manor Solomon. It was touching on love, and then he took it all away. So I fucking hate him. And like it's just those kind of like relationships where you just think we could have been something special and you ruined it. I don't know if they had that relationship with him. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, look, I'm not 100% sure. I think he was well respected, but it does just feel like he's sort of come home to Fulham in a way. And as a few people have said, it does also feel like it's just a matter of time until he takes a captain's armband. And yeah, I reckon a few more, maybe not a few more games, but it won't be long until we do see him wear the armband again for Fulham, because it's not often you give a lone player the captaincy. And I think it speaks a lot to his character and the kind of player that he is and the kind of sort of personality he is around the group to make that kind of impact in such a short space of time. And I assume he will do that again. So I'm personally looking forward to seeing him wearing the armband again, because I think he's the kind of person who you want to be captaining your side. And I think it is a matter of time. Guys, before we wrap up, a quick talk about Fulham women, who are back at the Cottage this Sunday. It's a 2:30 p.m. kickoff, playing against Saltdean, who are also unbeaten in the league so far this season. Fulham women's absolutely flying at the moment, and this is a huge game. And I have to say, props to the club, and a really good move by Fulham to actually push this one to the Cottage. It's a really important game for Fulham to get a result in. And I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago. The difference that having 1,000 people at the game to having 100 people at the game makes to the team out on the field is huge. And for such an important game to be playing at the Cottage, and just the atmosphere of that, and I guess the prestige, like these Saltdean players wouldn't have played in a game like that previously. Being in a proper stadium with proper change rooms and being able to come out and be in front of a crowd of thousands of people, have the game properly televised. I assume it will be streamed. I hope it will be, because I'm looking forward to watching this one. But it's a massive game for the team, and just a really important one. We've seen it over the last couple of seasons. You cannot drop points in this league. It's deadly. And so this one needs to be a win for Fulham. And if it is, I believe we should go top of the table at that point, even though we're a couple of games behind in terms of games played and therefore points. I think this one would take us to the top of the league. And I think once this team gets to the top of the league, it's going to be hard to displace this side. A huge bit of news coming out of the squad as well, with Sophie Manzi unfortunately doing an ACL, out for the season. I posted up her recent stats on Twitter this week as well, and it's huge numbers, and it's going to be a huge loss to the team as well. 33 appearances since joining Fulham, 38 goals, 15 assists in that time. We know that there's players who can step in. Thinking of someone like Georgia Heisman, who has struggled to make it into the team this season because of Sophie Manzi's great performances, but also just the general strength of the squad. But such a big injury, Dad. I'll throw it to you first. How big an effect do you think that will be felt around the squad? I guess there's two sides of it. Does it drive the rest of the squad on to perform for Sophie after her injury, or do you think it might have a slightly negative effect where losing a sort of talisman actually causes some struggles?
All of the above, I imagine. I mean, it's a real personal shame and a bit of a disaster for Sophie, and bad luck and commiserations to her for that. And I know she's completely gutted by it all. But she'll be back, no doubt, stronger. But look, it's an opportunity. That's the kind of stuff we were talking about before. I'm sure Steve J has a very similar approach to keeping good players on side and motivated and, working hard for their opportunity when it does come, because it invariably does come. And I'm sure Georgia will step up. She's a very capable player, and she's a very gritty and gutsy player, and she will absolutely relish the opportunity to, take that position, shoulder the responsibilities, and do it for the team. I think she'll be fine, and she's a very capable, high goal scorer. Can I say that? She scores a lot of goals.
She scores a lot of goals.
Yeah.
She scores. She's
And Ellie
capable of
Olds as
scoring
well.
George is capable of scoring multiple goals in a game. It's not unlike her to do that. So I think she'll be in there like a mangy little dog, not to be rude. But
I was going to say it's a better way of saying that. But I mean,
I
there's
say
Ellie
it. I
Olds.
say it with all the love in the world.
Ellie
love
Olds as well,
dogs.
who was out for the majority of last season with a similar season-ending injury, who's come back and has been scoring goals as well. And we're seeing a lot of goals from midfield this season. Maddie Parsonson's been in great form. Sasha Adamson continuing to score goals as well. So, look, it's a really strong squad that we've got, and it's constantly being added to and improved. And the way that this Fulham team moved the ball around, I don't know if you've seen the highlights from the 7-0 win in the FA Cup on the weekend, but this is an impressive side, and they're doing good things at the moment. So I really do urge everyone to go out, get tickets for this game, get down to the cottage, support the Fulham women's team in what is a huge game, and this game will have huge ramifications for the rest of the season for this side as well. So please do get down to the cottage and support on Sunday the 10th of November, kickoff at 2:30 p.m. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. It's been an absolutely hectic episode, and I've loved every second of it. It's been a good week to be a Fulham fan, and a good week to be a That's So Craven podcaster as well. So really appreciate all the support on the live stream from everyone and everyone joining in over the last couple of episodes. It's been great. Sammy, really good to have you back. Hoping we see you more regularly now.
Yeah, I'm healthy. Like I'm back. I'm in it. Like I had to. Do you know what? Like sometimes people need a minute, and that's okay. We can. Everyone needs time. If you're struggling, you also need time as well. I respect you and appreciate you. We love you here on That's So Craven Fulham podcast. It's okay. And then, but you get to a point, but then you get to a point, and then you kind of go, no, I need to be back in the world. I need to be back on the podcast because the people need it. And I'm just taking away from the people now, and I won't do that to you anymore because I've committed to a responsibility. It's been 3 years of my life, guys, and we just go deeper and deeper every year. So yeah, not Pod Daddy, but other daddies home.
We appreciate, Sammy. Well done. Good job. Glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Dad, thank you again for joining tonight.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm just enjoying Sam's full circle of love there. I think where you got to in the very end was a realization that you've been very selfish by not appearing. So glad to have you back, Sam.
I still haven't actually passed the kidney stone. So look,
Okay.
there might be gaps.
Hit the button, Jack. Hit the
There
button,
might be
Jack.
gaps, but like I'm just saying, it's not because I don't love you. It's not you. It's me, guys. Okay, I'm working through things.
I expect you to live tweet the passing of the kidney stone just for all our followers, seeing as you think they care that much. They'll obviously want that content, just not live streamed, just live tweeted, please.
I am a provider. I am a provider.
A huge thank you to everyone who's joined in on Twitter, on YouTube for this episode. A big thanks again to Jack Kelly for joining us, and a huge thank you to everyone who continues to support That's So Craven. We do really appreciate all the support and appreciate everyone getting involved. Check out the Discord, check out our YouTube, check out our Twitter, check us out everywhere. And as always, come on, you Whites.